It's now time to give you some money. And guess what? It's the predict and win with the UEFA Champions League on the Al Media channel. All you have to do is to predict correctly in those two games on Wednesday in the UEFA Champions League. The Bayern Munich versus Real Madrid game. And then also you have Arsenal taking on Sporting CP. Now, if you're able to predict correctly, then you could be walking away with 100 cedis. So predict the Arsenal game, and you could win 100 cedis for yourself, and predict correctly for the Real Madrid or Bayern Munich Real Madrid game. And then also you could win yourself some 100 cedis. All right, so welcome again. My name is Joseph. This is the Al Media channel, and it is time for another interesting, thrilling episode of the UEFA Champions League preview show. And like I said earlier on, just stay tuned because there's quite a lot more for you to win. But there are interesting games coming off in the UEFA Champions League quarterfinal second leg games. Now, all the way in Munich, we have two powerhouses, Bayern Munich, six-time winners of the UEFA Champions League, taking on Real Madrid, 15-time champions of the competition. So just between these two teams, they've won the title a combined 21 times. And it's interesting times, especially for a side like Bayern Munich heading to the game where they managed to beat Real Madrid by 2-1 in the reverse fixture at the Santiago Bernabeu. Now, many pundits are actually tipping Bayern Munich to go through at this point because they have some exciting form now, and it's mind-blowing the kind of football they are playing now. Some pundits are even saying they've been the best team in Europe throughout the season. I don't know if you agree with that. But on the other hand, you have Real Madrid that's also struggling so far. Over the weekend, they drew 1-0 against Girona in the La Liga, and that means that they continue to give away the La Liga title to their fiercest rivals, Barcelona. But then this is the UEFA Champions League, where one will say, no other team plays this competition better than Real Madrid. But this is a Bayern team that's ruthless this season they are coming up against. Now we look at the Bayern team so far this season, and they'll definitely be led by their marksman, Harry Kane, who is in some top form this season. 11 goals in the UEFA Champions League already. He will certainly be supported by the likes of Luis Diaz, Michael Olise, who was just unplayable in the game against Real Madrid in the first leg, and then also Serge Gnabry. Now, certainly in midfield, you would have the likes of Josh Kimmich and then also Pavlovic helping, and then in defense certainly would be Jonathan Tah and then also Dayo Upamecano. So for Bayern Munich, there's very little worry with regards to injuries and all that. But on the part of Real Madrid, that's where it gets even more interesting because there's one Kamavinga who picked up a yellow card, and in that first leg game we all saw that yellow card he picked up, and after the game he said he wasn't going anywhere, but it was just an unfortunate trip. But then it's football, and once you trip someone, then certainly the referee has a decision to make. So Real Madrid will be going into that game without Aurelien Tchouameni, who has been suspended for the game at the Allianz Arena. But then certainly they could be counting on the top scorer in the UEFA Champions League this season. That's Kylian Mbappé. He scored 14 goals so far. And guess what? He has a former Madrid player, a Madrid legend actually, that's Cristiano Ronaldo's record in sight. Ronaldo scored 17 goals in the UEFA Champions League in a single season. That still remains a competition record. Now, for Kylian Mbappé, a hat-trick for him against Bayern Munich would certainly see him equal that Cristiano Ronaldo record. But then if he should score 4 times, which is highly unlikely, then he might break that record outrightly. But then he would also be supported by the likes of Vinicius Jr. and then also Brahim Diaz. These two players, they've been quite good. And then certainly we could also have the likes of Jude Bellingham returning to the starting 11. Jude Bellingham spent a chunk of the time in the first leg on the bench, and that left many Madrid fans so furious knowing that he has the quality, to punish a team like a Bayern Munich. It still remains a 50-50 game, no, for most of the neutrals. But then, based on how well Bayern Munich played in the first leg, remember that their win last time out, or in the first leg against Real Madrid, was the first time since 2012 they managed to beat Real Madrid. So it was certainly a huge win for them heading back to Munich for the second leg. But they are still hopeful that, looking at how they've been able to wrap up the Bundesliga title, they've just stretched that lead as against the second place at Borussia Dortmund. They still managed to rest some key players in their game against St. Pauli over the weekend in the Bundesliga, where they even ended up beating them by 5-0. Harry Kane missed that game. He's set to return, to the lineup to face a Real Madrid. So the key battles will definitely be Harry Kane, who is on 11 goals, and then also Kylian Mbappé, who is on 14 goals. And like I said, both players have been on fire this season, especially Harry Kane, who scored some tremendous goals, very, very impactful goals for Bayern Munich. It's going to be KG. I don't know who you'll be tipping to go through, because Bayern Munich, they have their noses in front. They go into the second leg with a 2-1 lead back from the first leg. Now, another game that will be coming off will be in London, where Arsenal will be taking on Portuguese giant Sporting CP. Now, Arsenal, they also managed to get a 1-0 win in the first leg, and that goal was scored by Kai Havertz late in that game, in a game where you're thinking that Sporting CP had lots and lots of chances to have buried the game, but Arsenal still remained resolute throughout the game. They kept their composure, they defended so well, and they managed to score late in that game to Kai Havertz, to get the advantage. Now, talking about Arsenal, the team news we just received is that some key players could be missing, and most importantly, one player who could really be missed would be Declan Rice, because in that training the team had on Monday and then also on Tuesday, unfortunately, Declan Rice was nowhere to be found. Now, other players also on the injury list happens to be Bukayo Saka, who has an Achilles injury. There's the likes of Ricardo Calafiori, and then even Julian Timber. Don't forget that Mikel Merino is out for a long time. So it certainly could really derail Arsenal's chances of qualifying, because you mentioned all these players, especially with Declan Rice, who's been by far their best midfielder, or even best player to a larger extent this season. But the question is, now, who replaces Declan Rice in midfield? And Arteta, already we've seen him, do this over and over, especially when he has some or most of his midfielders injured. So you have the likes of a Berechi Eze, you have the likes of Kai Havertz, who scored a winner for Arsenal in the first leg, also around. These players could be deployed in midfield, and there could also be a possibility that Piero Hincapié could be deployed at a left back. Junior Timber wouldn't be available, so there's also another possibility that Ben White could also be deployed at right back. But Victor Gyökeres failed to score against his former side, Sporting CP, in the first leg. Now he returns to the Emirates in London, and he'll be hoping that he can get the goal for them. But for Sporting CP, it wouldn't really be an unchecked side. They were a bit fearless in their game against Arsenal. It was just unfortunate that they squandered most of the chances in that game, and they'll be hoping to get a win, at least maybe force extra time or even a penalty shootout in their game against Arsenal on Wednesday. So that's it with a preview show on the Al Media channel. But it's now time to give you some money. And guess what? It's the predict and win with the UEFA Champions League on the Al Media channel. All you have to do is to predict correctly in those two games on Wednesday in the UEFA Champions League. The Bayern Munich versus Real Madrid game. And then also you have Arsenal taking on Sporting CP. Now, if you're able to predict correctly, then you could be walking away with 100 cedis. So predict the Arsenal game, and you could win 100 cedis for yourself. And predict correctly for the Real Madrid or Bayern Munich Real Madrid game. And then also, you could win yourself some 100 cedis. That's some free money for you. All you have to do is to engage with our videos and just predict correctly, and you could stand a chance of winning some cash.